Hello, this is Su Robotti, and I'm here to welcome you to the very last of the Facebook Lives for DES Action's 40th anniversary year. We technically start in another 7 minutes, but I'm on here now trying to set up and making sure that we can get things to work well. Karen is watching, so I'm going to and I think that we're going to be inviting Karen in. Come on, Karen. I'm pushing your name. So anybody who's watching, please be a little bit patient while Karen and I work out the usual glitches. Constant glitches. Karen, I know you can hear me, although it's delayed. It says on my screen that I can allow viewers to request to join you as a guest in your broadcast. So I have activated that, and you're on as, I believe, the only viewer it sees. Can you find a place on your screen where you can ask to be invited? This is something I saw before when we were with Linda Greenbaum 2 months ago, and we were able to get her daughter Sally on easily at that point. So now I'm hoping that you can do that. Yep. Karen, what I'm seeing on the bottom of my screen is I see 4 different icons in the bottom left corner. One looks like a person with a box and a person inside the box next to it. So 2 people, the second one in a box. It's right next to the comment area and reverse. Are you seeing that? And if you see that, try clicking any button that you feel like. That doesn't look great. I'll do that. It's a little, I don't know. Anyone who's watching can tell me what I should do. Hair behind the ear or not behind the ear? Karen, I'm going to call you so that we can talk our way through this, because it looks to me like we should be able to do this. Now I'm on my phone. I'm here, Karen. So Karen, it says, mine says that viewers can request to join as a guest on your broadcast. Oh, there you are. Got it. Yes, add. I'm thinking you're going to be brought on now. It says it's adding you. Karen, I'm so excited. I think the difference is using an iPad instead of a Android-based, is it Android-based Samsung tablet, which is what I was using. Or I was using my Samsung phone in the past. Both of those were problems. Okay, it says it's adding Karen. Let's be patient and see if she can get there. In the meantime, I hope people like the mural on my wall. The birds and a tree. It's rather Japanese looking. It's very calming. It still says it's adding you, Karen. In the meantime, I'm going to be charging my phone. The other thing I did differently for anyone who's watching, connection failed. Okay. So, Karen, can you do the process again, and let's try it again. I'm going to add you. I'm going to add it, so we're adding Karen again to see if it works. I don't know why it's failing. Karen, it looks like it's going to fail again because it keeps trying to add and not adding. It occurs to me that I am probably, I'm going to Okay, I'm going to try one more time, Karen. I've switched from using mobile device. I've switched from using a mobile device to going back onto my regular Wi-Fi. I was using a hotspot because, oh, sorry, because we are having TV problems here in my apartment, which is what you're seeing. Oh, Karen, it says it's trying to add you, and yet I don't see it doing that. Karen, you said I can hear you but not respond. Sorry. What time is it? It's 5:59. We have another minute to play around with this and try and get it right. Karen, are you on your desktop or laptop or telephone and trying to connect in? The connection failed again. Not surprising. Karen, I'm waiting for you to respond to me. Are you on your cell phone on Facebook, or are you on a laptop on Facebook? Are you on a desktop on Facebook? What mode? On both telephone and laptop, responding on phone. I don't know what that means. Can you turn, what are you on? So you've got Facebook going on both your telephone and the laptop. Could you turn one of them off? Maybe it's confused. Maybe it doesn't know how to do one. Will you do that? My suggestion would be to turn off the phone because you're responding on the phone and it doesn't seem to be taking it. I'm going to leave the screen just to turn on a little more light. Okay. Now you're on the phone. The phone was not working, but okay. You can hear, Lisa Carver can hear Karen Calchman or Su Robotti. Hold on, let me try and, don't do anything, Karen, just let me try and add you again. Okay, Karen, it no longer will allow me to, it will no longer allow me to invite you. So if you would please switch to the opposite. Whatever you're on now, switch to the laptop, turn off your telephone. Please. Okay, because we're going to have to start now. We're 2 minutes late already. So, Karen, tell me when you are on the laptop. Karen, are you on the laptop yet? Karen is off the air for the moment, I guess because she's switching to the laptop. Hi, Niels Boostrom. Thank you for joining us. It's good to see your name on the screen. I'm going to start, and Karen will join us in a moment or two. Karen, you'll let me know when you're on, I hope, again. My name is Su Robotti. I'm the Executive Director of DES Action. DES Action is a membership organization. It has an annual membership fee, and mostly members are those who are affected by the drug diethylstilbestrol. Diethylstilbestrol is a drug given to pregnant women in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Those women who were prescribed it. Hold on, I'm just going to, no, okay. Those women who were prescribed it had effects from it. DES was an estrogen, was an endocrine disruptor, and it was a synthetic estrogen. And what it did was it seemed to interrupt the development of fetuses, not consistently, but in various ways, usually having to do with fertility systems. And that would be in the offspring and now potentially in the grandchildren of the original women. The original women also end up with a much higher rate of breast cancer, probably due to the DES exposure. DES action has merged with Med Shadow Foundation, which is a not-for-profit founded 5.5 years ago, that focuses on educating the public on the side effects of medicines and warning people that all medicines have side effects, and to balance the benefits of the medicine against the risks of side effects. So Karen, I see you're back up on the air, but it is not allowing me, you haven't appeared on the guest list. Did you do something before to get yourself on this guest list? Because you aren't appearing there, and you were there before. So I don't know what happened. I'm going to call Karen. Our worst case scenario is that, right, worst case scenario is I'm going to call her now so she can talk at least. Hold on 1 second while I actually call her. This is all very, very old-fashioned. What can I say? Huh, interesting. I just got it wrong. This meeting, this is for the, sorry, this is the 40th anniversary year of DES Action USA. And in celebration of the 40 years, we have been holding a Facebook Live each month.
Hello?
Hi, Karen. We can hear your voice now. And
This is the 40th anniversary year of DES Action USA.
Oh, you're going to have to mute the screen because I can hear myself in your background.
Yeah. Okay, let me mute that. Hold on.
Thank you. Okay. So in celebration of our 40 years, we've been holding a Facebook Live every month. And we've had great speakers, none of whom I can think of at this moment, but maybe you'll help me, Karen, because I have blanked on every single one of our speakers on Facebook Live.
Levine.
Susan Helmick was our guest just a couple of weeks ago. Dr. Levine was last month on breast cancers. We had a few questions already about soy and breast cancer and whether it was higher risk for DES daughters or better for DES daughters to use soy. It's a bit confusing. I had always heard that soy acts as an estrogen in the body, and therefore women at risk of higher risk of cancer, breast cancer, particularly DES daughters, which we are, should avoid soy. But now there's a study that seems to say that soy actually lowers the risk of breast cancer. That was an observational study. There was no control in it. They simply took 5,000 records and reviewed who ended up with breast cancer, who ate soy, and who didn't end up with breast cancer. And it looked like there was a difference of between about 30% more likely to have breast cancer if you ate soy. But there weren't many controls in that trial. It also didn't say what kind of soil. It didn't soy, not soil, soy. And it wasn't clear whether the soy was from whole foods or from supplements, or whether it was fermented or not fermented. So I would say that there is much more to go on, and everything in moderation. Karen, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, they said it was hard to find. I had read it's very hard to find whole, organic, non-processed soy. You really have to do some research. And yeah, I mean, I haven't tried to look for it myself, so I don't know. But I was one of those who stayed away from it because I thought the same thing.
Okay,
So can they hear me while I'm on the phone with you?
would somebody, Vicky or Kathleen or Niels, would you let us know if you can hear Karen? Can I comment on that from Yes, Sandy Miller wants to comment on, I've gone off on the wrong track. Let me just interrupt myself. I was supposed to introduce myself, give more background on why I got involved in DES action, then Karen was supposed to, and then we were going to be hoping people would write in questions. So I wandered off onto the soy topic too quickly. Lisa Carver, thank you for letting me know that I can hear Karen. Let me backtrack, we'll come back to soy, and give just a 1-minute background on me and how I got involved with DES action. Let Karen do the same thing. Thank you, Niels. And then we'll return to the story questions. And along the way, anybody with other questions, please type them in. We are here to answer your questions and to talk about the future of DES Action USA. So I joined DES Action USA probably in the late 1980s. I am a DES daughter. I did not want to think about my DES exposure. I was ignoring it, and in fact still like to ignore the fact that I have DES exposure because I don't have any active problems from it right now. DES did leave me infertile. My organs just didn't develop correctly at all. But I knew that early on in life and adjusted to it, and I thankfully have not had other significant typical issues, and no cancers, no endometrial, and fibroids. I'll just say that, since I couldn't say endometriosis. No autoimmune issues. You know, I've been very fortunate to date, and knock on wood, hope to stay that way. So I would get my copy of the newsletter, The Voice, every quarter. I would skim through it to see if there were any topics that seemed to apply to me. None of them did, fortunately. So then I would pass it on to my mother. I have no idea if she read it or not. And that was it. Life went on. And then I got older and got married. Life went on, had no children, of course. My nephew came to live with my husband and me. We became guardians of him. And the doctors wanted to put him on Ritalin. Because of ADHD issues, I became very concerned about the long-term effects of ADHD because of my long-term effects of DES. I started asking questions about what was known about the long-term effects of ADHD drugs, all of them. Discovered that there was nothing known about it and very few studies going on. In fact, to this day, I believe the longest study that's published is 340 days long, which is not a very long-term study. I do understand that there is a longer-term study going on now, but it will be years before we get the answers to that. So to make that story yet longer, I apologize. I became very concerned that people in general don't seem to realize that all medicines have side effects and that there are potential long-term effects that are really not tested for, and we don't know until decades after the drug has been on the market. It's not typical to have a drug like DES with such devastating effects that are found out so many years later, but it's entirely possible. So that's why I started MedShadow Foundation 5 years ago. We have a separate website called MedShadow, and we focus on educating people about what the side effects are of medicines that they take. Statins, cholesterol, high blood pressure, any kind of typical drugs. We check up on it. So please take a look at it. About 4 years ago, the board of DES Action decided that they did not need to be a standalone organization anymore, that they could lower their overhead costs because membership was declining and funding was very difficult to get for DES Action. There just weren't enough membership dollars. So they donated the organization to MedShadow because of the similarity of mission. And since then, I have been running both DES Action and MedShadow. And Karen came on board really 2 years ago as a strong advocate to having an updated seminar to educate the public about DES and to do it at Mount Holyoke. And I wanted to not do that, but Karen insisted and pushed and pulled and called people and followed up and made it happen. And now she's our member manager, and I have so much respect for her passion and knowledge and commitment to DES and DES Action. So Karen, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm so sorry nobody can see me because I have my DES Action button on and I have my voice here to show. But anyway, so just like probably most of you, I have hallmark conditions that are definitely linked to DES exposure. But probably like most of you again, I was able to have children, or I had a little problem, but whatever. I ignored my exposure like Sue did. You know, when things are quiet, it's human nature to not focus on the negative, so you forget. All of a sudden, about 3, 4, 5 years ago, I had a little scare, and they checked it out. It was nothing. But I went, you know what? I need to up my membership again. So I joined. And then, as Sue said, I'm a Mount Holyoke graduate. So I saw in one of the voices that the DES Action Archives were looking for a home. And coincidentally, I had been talking to the president of Mount Holyoke, who said, you know, I said, I'm DES affected. There are so many women on this campus who are going to be doctors. We have like a huge percentage of women at Mount Holyoke and in the Five College area who become doctors, who become researchers. I said, this is something they should know about, they should study. And she said, oh, that's a great idea. I love that. And then she dropped it. The next voice that came out said, DES Action Archives goes to Smith. And I was like, what? So I did my research. As Sue said, I'm pretty feisty when I want to be. And I said, okay, this is an opportunity. There are thousands and thousands of students in that Five College area. We need to get them on board. We need for them to know what DES exposure is. We need them to advocate for us. So I contacted Smith, I contacted Mount Holyoke, and it took us a year. But a year later, we got acknowledgement. Not only that, we got a symposia at Boston University and at Mount Holyoke College where professors attended, students attended, DES daughters attended, general public attended. So it was really successful, and I think I proved myself to Sue. And she said, you know, I've really enjoyed working with you on this. Let's go forward. So I became the community manager. As she said, I'm passionate. My basic responsibilities, I think you all need to know, Sue volunteers her time. There are like 4 or 5 others of us who work part-time only. Some of the other staff people work both for MedShadow and DES Action. I'm the only dedicated DES Action person, but I work 20 hours a week. In that 20 hours, what I try to do is answer all members' needs, you know, whether they're logged in, whether they're joining, whether they need resources like doctor's lists or lawyer's lists, whether they need a shoulder to cry on because they've just been diagnosed with something. Whether they need me to help them, I don't really do a lot of research for other people because there's so much on our website. But occasionally, if it's a really tough question and I'm curious about it too, I'll do a little research. I help edit the newsletter. I am now amending and overhauling the new member packet because it was very outdated. I moderate the Facebook page. We work together on this, but it's kind of my responsibility, and I call other people in on the staff when I feel like they have more expertise. We have a digital director who is amazing, but she's one person. So she works for both MedShadow and DES Action. I also organize and help with education initiatives, symposia, workshops, seminars. I helped to implement the research project that we had going this year, the DES exposure and gender, sex, and sexuality. I write the templates for the special appeals letters, the thank you letters, the last member letters. I write personal thank you notes to people who donate a little bit more. I try to think of new ideas to engage members. So I'm basically your member community manager, and I create weekly and monthly reports. So it's a big job, but I am totally passionate. I think the hardest part of the job is when someone calls who has been diagnosed with something, and they just want answers. They want to know, has this been DES linked? What kind of doctors should I see? What should I do about them? We can't give medical advice. We can point you out to the research that's on our website. We can point you to our frequently asked questions. We can give you doctors' lists and lawyers' lists. We can listen. And that's the hardest part. We can't say, yes, this is DES linked, or no, this isn't, unless it's been proven in many research studies. And I think that's very difficult, because when people become sick, they want to blame everything on their DES exposure. And yes, in fact, maybe someday we'll find out that all those illnesses were related to our exposure, but we just don't know. So I think that was a really major point that I wanted to bring out. There's so much that we don't know.
That's true.
So that's about it. And unless you want to go to the questions, there are many benefits of membership.
Well,
Membership.
I do want to remind people that we consider this a town hall. So we are looking for you to make comments and to ask questions much more actively than we have in other Facebook Lives. Other Facebook Lives, we were interviewing people and did questions at the end. But here we'd like to intersperse questions throughout. And we'll also be interspersing some ideas of what we think are real benefits of membership for DES Action. We'd also like to hear from you what you think are benefits, and perhaps what we could do that would be an additional benefit for you. We would like to increase our membership. Our membership is only 600 people. And considering that 5 million women or more were given this drug, we don't know exactly how many, pregnant women, and so there were probably close to 500 million babies born. And did I say 500 million? 5 million, I apologize. 5 million is the key number. We should have a lot more than 600 members. So please help us figure out how we can attract more members, and ask us questions that you'd like to know the answer to about how DES Action works, or anything about DES. I'm going to jump backwards now we started off talking about soy, because earlier in the day we received an email asking us to talk about soy, its effect on the body, and its effect on breast cancer. So I mentioned earlier that there was a study that was sent to us. We took a look at it. It doesn't seem very conclusive to me. It does lean towards saying soy is a beneficial part of a woman's diet. And women who eat soy regularly seem to have a lower incidence of breast cancer. That said, I took a very cursory look at the study. I didn't look at it closely enough. It was not clear on how much soy, what type of soy, if it was pasteurized or fermented or fresh or whole. And it didn't have a control group of people who were just not in the study at all, so that you'd had a clean number to compare it to. So I would say that it is at this point unclear, and as usual, I would go anything in moderation. Now, Sandy Miller, asked if she could comment on that from a gut biome perspective. So gut biomes are a big, hot, trendy topic for anybody who doesn't know what they are. Sandy explains that they are bacteria in the gut or missing from the gut that transform the soy to a beneficial chemical or not. Women who don't have that bacteria are unable to make that conversion, and thus the soy will be harmful for them. Interesting. Very interesting. Thank you, Sandy. I didn't know that, and I don't know you. Are you a doctor or a researcher, or just a very well-informed layperson, which is what I am, is a well-informed layperson, not a doctor. But that sounds really interesting. Another question that's popped up on the screen from Kathleen Timothy Welch is she would like to know if anybody has linked von Hippel-Lindau to DES. I don't know what von Hippel-Lindau is. She says her son has a new mutation. I'm sorry, that's probably not a good thing. But I don't know anything about it, and I don't know. As far as I know, I've never seen it on our website through the research. So, Karen, have you heard of this?
I think either Kathleen, somebody has brought it up before, and months ago I looked it up. Unfortunately, I can't remember either. But I seem to remember that there wasn't a direct link to DES, as we know now.
Here's Karen. Okay. As we know now, and that is always the answer. It's as we know now. Lisa Carver asked, what supplements would be safe for women in menopause fighting dryness? This is a great opportunity to promote another benefit of membership. DES daughters who are members can join a private Yahoo discussion group of just DES daughters, and they have very wonderful, in-depth, and intimate discussions about many, many of the topics that have to do with DES, and sometimes topics that aren't directly related to DES. Vaginal dryness in menopause is not unique to DES, but seems to be a common problem among DES daughters of that age. And there is a very long discussion on it. The upshot of it was most of the DES daughters who commented in the group then on the discussion were in favor of using coconut oil, pure coconut oil, in liquid or semi-solid form. They gave very graphic instructions on how best to insert it. But it was a direct application, just using coconut oil in the vagina seemed to very much help to lubricate the skin, soften it, help fight the dryness. I don't know if ingesting coconut oil would also help. It's pretty healthy stuff, so it's probably a good idea. But Karen, anything to add on the vaginal lubrication or dryness?
There is something called Riplens that's been out for a long time. The only thing is it's got, and you can get it in any drugstore for like $15 or $16, but it has chemicals in it. There's something very new that my doctor just gave me a sample of. It's called Reverie, Revaree. And all it has in it is hyaluronic acid and sodium salt. So it's pretty benign. And the only problem is, because it's brand new, it's expensive. It's about $55 a box, and there are I forget how many in the box. It comes to something like $5 a little thing that you insert. It's expensive. I ordered it just to see, and I'll let you know in the DES Daughters Support Group how I like it. Hopefully the price will go down because it seems like it's pretty benign, but of course the most benign thing is the coconut oil. It tends to get messy. The graphic. You have to cut straws. You have to.
Well, there were
first,
right. There are multiple ways. Some of the DES daughters keep it in the refrigerator so it semi-solidifies, which makes it much easier to insert. Even freeze it makes it much easier, but it does tend to be a bit messy. But that's actually a very typical discussion that we would have on the DES Daughters group, is women sharing their personal experience, with the caveat that we're not doctors, we're just sharing our personal experience, and this DES Action website will give you all the research that we have from doctors.
Right.
So Kathleen,
Oh, go ahead.
Kathleen Timothy Welch, who had asked about the mutation before, just responded and said, "I'm doing active research. I just want to put his rare disease online to connect with other daughters." So if any other daughters or any parents who have children or anybody who is affected by this, please go ahead and just either share on the screen now, or if you're looking at this in months to come, write to us at info@DES Action, and we will connect you with Kathleen. Thanks.
Yeah, they can also become a member and join the DES Daughter Support Group, because it's really a wealth of information.
Good.
And you may connect Kathleen with other people who have a similar experience with their children.
Great.
I can't remember, some people's names I recognize right off the bat as being members. Other people I have to look up. So I don't remember if Kathleen's a member or not. But I highly suggest membership. I need to let you know that annual membership is only $40 a year. I know I sound like I'm in sales. I used to be. But if the $40 is absolutely financially prohibitive for you, we will work something out. We want members. We can only be strong with our members. We're a member-supported group, and I've gotten so much out of my membership. So I'll get off my podium, but I know we had some other questions, like,
well, I'm just
want to address.
Wait.
Okay.
I'm reading the screen, and Cindy Miller I had asked her what her background was, and she volunteers that she's a microbiome-based health coach. She says, "Nice to meet you," and a DES daughter. So thank you for joining us. And she also puts on the screen, if anybody would like to read more about how gut bacteria make that transformation, you can read it, and the list is on the screen. So just please scroll down and take a look at it. So here,
And
Joe.
also, you can go back to the Facebook page after the video, because we save it, and you can see the comments again, so they're not going to just disappear.
Good. And yes, this and all the Facebook Lives are available on the website on the homepage for a month, and then behind the paywall for history for you to go back to. Joelle Francis writes in, not a question, but as Karen probably knows, my interest in DES action is related to DES sons and the relationship between DES and gender issues, particularly later in life. I'm a DES son and now a DES daughter, I guess, as I transitioned 4 years ago. Well, congratulations on your transition. I'm happy. I hope that worked out well for you. This gives us a great opportunity to talk about a big project that Karen spearheaded again this year. Based on the symposium at Mount Holyoke, we made a connection with one of the professors there, Dr. Jacqueline Luce, who, help me here, Karen, she's a professor of gender studies. Is that, simplistically, gender studies, it's a very long title she has. And she proposed a research study on the experience of gender and sexuality among those who have been DES exposed. And this was an opportunity for us to really explore gender identity issues. People who identify in a non-traditional way. I would be traditional. When I was born, I was determined to be a girl. I was still a woman, female throughout my life, but there are many, many people, and it seems to be a lot in the DES community, who identify as either a different sex or as intersex, and are exploring many issues in the LGBTQI community. I think I got that right. This is all a new area for me, so please don't be offended if I get something wrong. Just correct me. That would be helpful. Jacqueline she's done in-person interviews with about 30 DES exposed people, and has been summarizing and giving the information about how she concludes DES has affected people's self-identity, in a series of articles for The Voice. We have published an article in each of the 4 issues in the 40th anniversary year, and we'll finish up with a 5th article in first quarter and winter of 2019. Do I have that right again, Karen?
Yes.
Good. In addition, she's writing a summary report that puts everything together, and that'll be available to DES members on DES Action USA, probably closer to April or May. We'll be announcing that and making that available to members. So
right. And I think it's important for us to say, well, I wanted to say 2 things about this. One, there is a scientific hypothesis, it's just a hypothesis at this point, that DES exposure actually impacted, affected, is linked to sexual, gender, and sex. And somehow the hormone changed that in the growing fetus. That has not been proven. So what Jacqueline was doing is she wanted to talk to people who knew they were DES exposed or who thought they were, because we don't always have proof. And what have been their experiences of gender or sex, gender identity, sexual orientation? What has been their lived, embodied experiences, and how is that relating to their health care? Her specialty is medical populations and how their conditions affect their lives and how their lives affect medicine. So it's really, really interesting. And Joelle is also a professor who is going to be writing a lot about this. So we're hoping that they both connect.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's a really new field of study, and we're very, very proud that we brought it to the forefront. If anything positive comes out of our exposure, this is one of the things.
Good.
And the other thing I wanted to point out was in her interviews, and I'm not saying who, but at least one person said, and this kind of is generalized to all of us, if some condition that we have, if we were meant to have it because that's just the way we were going to be born, okay. But if we find out that we are gender dysphoric, or that we have struggled most of our lives, or that we have a medical condition that is caused by our DES exposure, then it becomes a problem. And we've been victimized, and we don't want to be victims. So
let me just clarify one, Karen. I really like that quote, and I like the concept. I just want to clarify. Your phrasing was might lead people to the wrong conclusion. You said, I won't tell you who said this. We don't know who said anything. That was a quote taken,
right.
Everybody who was interviewed for the study, their identity is shielded. We don't know even who was interviewed or who wasn't. We don't have any master list, and we never will. That's part of the research, is to keep that completely private. But there are some quotes drawn from the interviews without names attached, and that's what Karen was pulling from, right?
Exactly, and that's why I say I won't tell you who said this, because I don't know.
Right, because I won't, I can't, and never will be able to. Exactly, good. I'm going to keep reading down comments on the screen so that we can comment on them. We have some more comments, the questions that came to us through the day, and we'll get to them, but Vicki Dandridge wants to know what can be done or is being done to stimulate new research on DES exposure for this aging population and third-generation exposure. That is a great question. And it's one that Karen and I are pretty much obsessed with right now. Wouldn't you say that, Karen? We interviewed one of the, first of all, the primary major research that's going on for DES today is what's called the DES follow-up study. And what happened was I'm just trying to get my dates right here. In the early to mid 70s, when it became clear and apparent that DES was causing major harm to, at that point, to daughters. Nothing was known about sons or the mothers. Um, the 5 or 6 studies were started across the country to track the women and to gather the medical information that needed to make a good study. So they found a few thousand women who had been given DES, where they could get complete medical information on how much DES they'd been given, when they were given it, at what time and what intervals, and the outcome of the births, the children, and they have tracked those people now for 50 years, close to 50 years. And it's condensed down now. It used to be in 5 locations. It's down to 1 location or 2 locations. There are somewhat fewer people in it because people have died off or just disappeared, but they work very hard to try to keep people in it because DES is not only a synthetic hormone, it is the very first endocrine disruptor. And as many people are aware, we're surrounded by endocrine disruptors now. And what endocrine disruptors do is they interfere with your endocrine system, which is the system that tells your genes when to start and when to stop. So they tell genes when to start growing hair and when to stop growing hair, when to start puberty, when to end puberty, when to start growing, when to end growing height-wise. I mean, pretty much everything in your body is controlled by this system, and it disrupts it. So DES mothers, daughters, and sons and now grandchildren, are the purest and best way to see what happens with endocrine disruptors throughout generations. Because when the DES mothers were given DES, that endocrine disruptor, it was the only endocrine disruptor ever. It was the first ever entered into the food stream, into our lives. So it's very important that we do this research and we continue the research. And we got a hint from one of the researchers that there might be some interruption of funding. We've since spoken to the lead researchers who have assured us that the funding for the DES follow-up study is strong. It continues. I don't think it's enough. They don't have enough money to study the sons particularly well. They don't have enough money to follow the DES grandsons. They are following the DES granddaughters. I'd like to be more aggressive and lobby for more money, but I'm assured that that's going to be not only fruitless, but get in the way of the funding that there is. Anyway, Karen, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so as I've explained to especially DES sons who contact me, they want to be parts of studies. They want to know what's been done. And 2 reasons that DES sons haven't been so included in the studies. It's not for want of trying. In those days, men were very reticent. They didn't really want to discuss their bodies, their problems, their medical conditions that may be related to urogenital systems. So that was, the one thing. And the other thing is the original mothers, daughters, and sons and grandchildren, they don't accept new people into the study. It's those people and the generations of those families who have given their permission and want to be part of the study. So unfortunately, nobody can join unless you can find, and unfortunately we don't know of any, if you can find a privately funded study by an academic institution or hospital, that's great. We would love to know about it because those privately funded studies, just like Parkinson's or anything else that some of these big actors fund, yes, they would take new participants. But we don't know of any privately funded studies that are asking for people. So that's why they are studying the 3rd generation. The other thing is in the mice generation, they've studied down to, I think, 6 generations of mice. And of course, mice's lifespans are much shorter. And they said a lot of the female mice that they injected, and they don't know, they try to make the ratios as best they can, but they don't know exactly when they're injecting mice with DES. Is it really proportional to what DES mothers got and what the prenatally exposed children got? So a mice died of their exposure. So ironically enough, a lot of the studies are done on the male mice. Interesting. So yes, we don't know what more to do to get the studies pushed forward. They do have surveys every, I think, 5 years. The researchers send out surveys to the original cohort to follow up people. And then that kind of points them into the direction with what is happening with that cohort and where should they focus their studies.
Mm-hmm. So Karen, here's an interesting question from Robin Levangie. I'm a 1962 DES daughter that went through early menopause and started with hot flashes and night sweats, and almost 19 years later still has nightly sweats and early morning hot flashes. Please help. Any advice?
Wow.
That's a long time for sweats.
Yeah, I mean, all I know is that early menopause is a hallmark of DES exposure.
Yes.
I also went through early menopause.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this is going to make you feel any better, Robin, but one person I interviewed up at Mount Holyoke went through menopause in her late 20s.
Oh, God. That's terrible. That's terrible.
Yeah. And luckily, she was able to have children very, very early. She was in her teens or early 20s when she stopped having her kids. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, and the vaginal. So if you want to write to me, Karen at desaction.org, Robin, that's Karen. Let me see if I can.
Karen's email address is Karen at desaction.org.
Yeah, it's not letting me make a comment on my computer, unfortunately.
Okay, no, not when you're on. Oh, I wonder why. Huh.
So, but there's in that DES Action, the Daughters group, that they will have lots of suggestions. I don't know how to stop your hot flashes.
Yeah, I don't.
But maybe some of the ladies do.
Well, I know that there's been some discussion, and I have a good friend who did use the HRT, the hormone replacement therapy, in a cream form on her thighs, and found it to be wonderful, very, very good. She used it for as short a time period as she could. I think she used it for maybe 2 years, and weaned herself off of it. I don't think you can just stop it, but you have to wean yourself off. There are many, and she, was ultimately happy she did that. It was a tough decision. Most DES daughters think carefully before they would use a hormone replacement therapy. It depends on, if you've dealt with it for 19 years. I'm sure you're sick and tired of it, but I guess you've dealt with it. So I don't know any so-called natural methods that work with that. But quick comment from Joe. Yeah.
I was going to say for the vaginal atrophy.
Oh, yeah.
There's Vagifem is the brand name. And again, use it for the shortest period of time possible. But you insert it 3 times a week. It's by prescription, and they say it's only locally absorbed. It helps the vaginal lining, and that even women who have had breast cancer can safely use it. But you talk to your doctor. We never advise for any DES daughter to use any kind of hormones for a long period of time.
Right.
Just because we don't know. They're saying it shouldn't bother you, but they said DES exposure shouldn't bother you.
Exactly.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
So here's
I want to address.
Go ahead.
The question from Sally Grenville.
Oh yes, please do.
She had an excellent question, and I don't know if she's on now or not, but she's a DES daughter, and she said she's interested in how we as an organization plan to address the issue of the 3rd generation and the 4th generation.
Yes.
Taking ongoing pressure from all affected generations to continue the research, the urgency for DES daughters as we age, and the grandchildren, the 3rd generation, don't seem to be very engaged. They now appear to be, some of their impacts right now anyway, seem to be subtle and harder to diagnose,
and harder
how
to
do we
tie to
involve this
DES.
third generation?
Right. It's also harder for these women, young women, to draw the line between their lives today and what their grandmother took, 50 years ago in pill form or a shot. And I get their hesitation. I mean, I myself like to not think about it when I don't have to. We are just coming into the fertility years for this generation, so it'll be interesting to see. We don't have any clear direction yet. It looks like there are some infertility issues, but there's not enough data to tell us yet. What would your advice be, Karen?
So my own daughter and my son, I mean, I've asked her, would you be interviewed for like a Q&A? What are your questions? And I think it's typical human nature. Until there's an accident at the corner of your street, there's no yield sign or no caution sign put up. So it's unfortunate, but until a third generation has a problem, that's when they call. I had a call the other day from a granddaughter. She said, can you give me a list of doctors? And I said, yes, I can. Technically, you're supposed to be a member. You can look up the list yourself. And you would be much better to look up which doctors you prefer, but I can give it to you. And then she said, I can also get a list from my insurance company. And until I find out that my condition is linked to DES exposure, I don't want to become a member and I don't want to engage. And I understood that. So I think it's the DES daughters and the family members who have to not scare the third generation, but just say, look, knowledge is power. Education is power. And if you have the $40 a year to join, it's important to at least get the newsletter. And then you know what the research is. And if you don't want to read the newsletter until something happens to you, fine.
Right.
But just be aware. We're not saying you need to live, breathe, and think DES exposure. We're just saying, don't stick your head in the sand.
I'm going to take a whole different tactic for a moment. Osteoporosis is a big issue for DES daughters also, because DES tends to make puberty start later, or at least a period, menstruation tends to start later for DES daughters, and there tends to be early menopause. So the fewer years that you're in the menstruation years, those are the years when you're building bone. And once you hit menopause, your bone starts to cast off more than it casts on. So you become more at risk for osteoporosis. So osteoporosis is of high risk for DES daughters. We don't know if it is for DES sons or anyone else. The research we have just shows that. MedShadow has became aware of a court case going to the Supreme Court with Fosamax, which is an osteoporosis drug made by Merck. It is a good drug in terms of slowing osteoporosis. It doesn't quite reverse it, but does slow it. But it has a fairly rare side effect, a very devastating side effect of 1 in every 1,000 to 10,000 women will get a spontaneous fracture of their femur, which is the bone, your thigh bone, usually close to your hip. The spontaneous fracture is different from a normal fracture. It is one that happens without warning. It happens without reason. It doesn't need a fall. All you have to do is just stand up and walk, and it could just break on you. It's usually a very bad break. It often goes through the skin. It usually requires surgery to mend. And when it happens in a senior woman, it can be life-altering. It can be very devastating. Merck knew about this drug and alerted the FDA about it, but played kind of a game in wanting to call it a stress fracture on the warning for the drug. And the FDA said, no, we will not accept He would not allow you to call it a stress fracture. So Merck didn't put it on out as a warning. So doctors and patients did not know about this for a period of time until the FDA stepped in and required them to put the warning on the drug. Merck is now saying that they are not responsible for those women who had a spontaneous fracture, for their pain and suffering or medical bills, because the FDA wouldn't let them put the warning on the drug. And the court is going to have to decide if Merck can get away with saying, oh, we tried to, but they gave a misleading definition to the FDA, and the FDA wouldn't put up with it. And if the Supreme Court supports Merck playing this game, it could mean that other drugs, other pharmaceutical companies who find out about a devastating side effect can toy around with the FDA, giving them disingenuous warnings that they want to put out, and then consider themselves covered so that they can't be sued for the damage, which would ultimately mean that people don't know about very major risks of drugs. This is right something that affects DES daughters. It's right something that falls within MedShadow's mission. So MedShadow has filed an amicus brief, which means friend of the court, to Supreme Court. We have filed, and it's been accepted by the Supreme Court to be part of the discussion, part of the trial that will take place on January 7th. We just found out it's been scheduled by the Supreme Court. So I'm just very proud and happy that MedShadow has stood up and said, no, pharmaceutical companies have to be required to quickly and transparently and clearly tell people about adverse events, bad events that happen with their drugs as soon as they find out about it. So, yay. That was kind of long, I'm sorry.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. It's a big deal.
Sue, for some reason I can no longer see the comments. I will answer anyone I can or connect people with who they need to be connected to tomorrow when I'm back at work.
Okay.
But we're coming up on 4 o'clock, and I just wanted to mention some of the things that we've done this year, and please write to us. So here's some of our successes. For our 40th anniversary, we've done our Facebook Live interviews with researchers, doctors, authors, documentarians. Go to the website, and if you're a member, you can look at the past interviews after you log in. If you're a non-member, anybody at all can look at the video that's up there now with Dr. Gary Levine on our homepage.
Mm-hmm.
And our other accomplishment has been our Voice Center spreads have been about the early founders, the early members, the early movers and shakers who have created DES Action, who have lobbied with politicians, who have changed laws. I mean, they've been amazing. You can read about them, again, through the archived voices if you're a member, or you can become a member and you get this quarterly voice. We've instituted a new column called Did DES Cause This? Because I can't tell you how many times I get calls with everything under the sun. Did my exposure cause this? Mm-hmm. So we have a new column in the Voice. We did the Gender, Sex, Sexuality Project. This is a big one for us. Sue and I advocated to the USPS task force cervical cancer screening and said, look, you need to make DES daughters an exception to the guidelines, because now the guidelines are 3 to 5 years. Well, pshaw.
Not for us.
DES daughters need to be seen every year. Mm-hmm. And according to Dr. Herbst, who's the first person who linked that CCA, clear cell adenocarcinoma, with DES exposure, even if you don't get a PAP every year, which you should, even if you don't, the pelvic exam and the palpate exam is more important. You need to have those annually. So the USPS task force listened to us. They made a huge box on their website that says these are the exceptions. DES daughters are mentioned, or not even daughters. It says DES exposed individual.
Right.
They're
So,
mentioned several times throughout the whole document. And I mean, that's a huge win. There are clinical considerations, which is what doctors look at when they're seeing what screenings have to happen. You know, they click on that. That's huge now. It's like you can see it.
well, Karen, what makes it very huge for our members and for anybody DES exposed is that if your insurance company doesn't want to pay for that examination, all you have to do is supply the information from the CDC, and they will have to.
Right.
So your insurance should cover it.
CDC and the USPS task force.
Yes. So before we hit the 1 hour mark, Karen, is there more?
Yeah, just a couple more things. We're overhauling the new member packet. We're almost done with it. We are trying to include DES sons more, not only in our interviews, our Q&As.
Yes.
I don't know. We want some creative ideas. You sons out there, anybody out there who has some creative ideas to include sons, we want to do that. The grandchildren generation, we want to include them. We want to engage them. We want to get them as members.
Mm-hmm.
Another huge success for us, we return calls within 24 hours usually. On the weekend, it'll be a Monday if it comes in over the weekend. So we've done all this in 1 year, and I'm really proud of it, if I do say so myself.
Karen, you've had a great year. Before we wrap up, Joelle Francis has a really cool anecdote I want to read. She says, I have a number of anecdotal stories, and one in particular is interesting. 2 boys born of a DES mother. They were given up for adoption and never met until their 50s. When they connected, they learned they had both transitioned to female. For me, I've had specialists say that I most likely transitioned in utero, but there's no science to back this up. The concept of I just blanked on the word, a baby in utero is not a baby, not an infant, it's a fetus. Thank you.
An embryo.
Embryo, but then fetus. In utero, being bathed in estrogen for 9 months. We just don't know what that really means, how that could possibly be. So what that does to people. So, and there was, Sandy wanted to check in again, our gut woman, I'll call you. Sandy Miller says, I may be gut biased, smile, but I also started having hot flashes and night sweats and acne among other symptoms, a bit worse PMS, and all of it cleared up after healing my gut. My hormones were very balanced after healing the gut lining and rebuilding my bacteria levels. I'm having trouble with Facebook likes to put little smiley faces all over everything, and I can't read the bottom of it. So I would encourage you to go on screen and read it yourselves. But I am a big supporter of gut biome health. I think everybody really should be paying attention to the gut biome. Okay.
So can I just,
Yep.
Since we could go on for another hour with questions.
But we're not going to. Yes.
But really what we want to know from you, please email info@desaction.org or Karen@desaction.org.
Yes.
We want to know what part of our work interests you. Have you ever thought of volunteering? What do you think we do the best? What haven't we been successful with? What do you consider benefits? We want to always improve. So what do you want to see us do next year? Do you like our newsletter? All of those things, everything that we do. Please email, make suggestions, and we will always answer you, as soon as we can.
Good. Well, I think that's a great point to wrap up on, Karen. Thank you. And I think we're done. Thank you, everybody. Please write, please keep in touch and give us your ideas. Thank you, Karen, for a great year.
Thank you, Sue. Sue has been my rock.
Okay. Bye-bye.